Europe's biggest democracy on the brink of a radical shift, recent shocking election result leaves Germany at a crossroad, navigating between the victory of the election and the way forward to strengthen a stronger party coalition for an efficient government. Can the mainstream parties contain the rising tide of nationalism? With the new administration, what will be Germany's role in NATO? This and many more will be explored in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Thabita Ako. Let's begin. Today, Germany's latest general election has left the country at a political crossroad, with the conservative CDU-CSU securing victory but facing an unexpected challenge from the far-right Alternative for the Scotland, which nearly doubled its support. As the coalition negotiation began, tensions are rising across Germany and Europe over the implications of AfD's surge, its radical policies, and what this election means for Germany's role in global affairs. The CDU-CSU, led by Friedrich Merz, emerged as the leading party, winning almost 29% of the vote. While this marked a victory for the conservative, it was far from a decisive one. Merz acknowledged the challenges ahead, stating, "We need to talk to each other and as quickly as possible to form a government for Germany that can take action." However, the true headline of the election was the AfD's dramatic rise, capturing 21% of the vote. The party, known for its anti-immigration stance, Euroscepticism, and controversial historical views, has solidified itself as the second largest political force in Germany. Alice Wildel, the party's co-leader and candidate for chancellor, celebrated the result as a historic success, our best result ever. With the AfD's growing influence, Germany now faces a difficult question. Will traditional parties be able to keep their so-called firewall against the far right, or is the political landscape shifting permanently? The AfD's rise is largely fueled by voter frustration over immigration, economic struggles, and Germany's energy policies. The party has repeatedly called for mass deportations and tighter border controls, positions that have drawn comparisons to far-right movements across Europe. Despite its growing support, the AfD remains politically isolated. Every major party has ruled out forming a coalition with them, including Merz CDU. The party is also under surveillance by German intelligence agencies for suspected extremist ties, and its rhetoric has frequently sparked controversy. One of the most shocking moments of the campaign came when Wildel refused to distance herself from comments made by an AfD founder, who described Nazi Germany as no more than a speck of bird poo in over 1,000 years of successful history. With the AfD now the largest opposition party, will Germany's traditional parties find a way to push back against its growing influence, or will voter dissatisfaction continue to fuel its rise? Despite the conservative win, forming a government will not be easy. Merz CDU-CSU did not secure enough seats to govern alone and must now look for coalition partners. The most likely scenario is a coalition with the Social Democrats, who suffered a historic defeat, securing only 16% of the vote, their worst result since World War II. With Kohl's SPD weakened and junior coalition partners like the Greens and Free Democrats also losing support, it is dependent on Merz to bring together a stable government. The election results also have implications beyond Germany. U.S. President Donald Trump, who has been vocal in reshaping U.S. relations with Europe, praised the AfD's rise, stating, "Much like the USA, the people of Germany got tired of no common sense agenda, especially on energy and immigration." Trump's stance on NATO has also caused concern in Berlin. Mayors, in response to Trump's unpredictable foreign policy, warned that Europe must prepare for a future where the US is less committed to European security. For me, the absolute priority will be to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible so that step by step we can achieve independence from the USA in defense matters, Mayor said. With Trump potentially pushing for a weakened NATO, can Germany and Europe afford to rely on the US for security, or probably it's time for Europe to take full responsibility for its own defense? Germany's elections have sent shockwaves, we all know, across Europe. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed Merkel's victory, emphasizing the need for enhancing joint security and delivering growth for both our countries. French President Emmanuel Macron also congratulated Merkel, stressing the importance of working together, a strong and sovereign Europe. However, Europe is also alarmed by the AfD's rise. Many fear that a stronger far-right movement in Germany could disrupt EU's cooperation, weaken support for Ukraine, and embolden similar political forces across the continent. With rising populism in several European countries, is Germany's election a sign of a larger trend, and could this shift threaten the unity of the European Union? Meanwhile, Merz now faces a daunting task as he attempts to form a government. He must balance economic concerns, growing security threats, strained US-Germany relations, and the challenge of keeping the AfD at bay. Germany's struggling economy, high energy prices, and immigration policies remain key concerns for voters. The AfD's success shows that many Germans are dissatisfied with the status quo, and Merz will need to address these concerns effectively to prevent further far-right gains. With coalition talks expected to be long and difficult, can Merz establish a stable government before Germany's political situation deteriorates further? And will his leadership be strong enough to contain the far-right influence while keeping Germany at the center of European decision-making? Well, just thinking. Germany's election marks a turning point. The rise of the AfD, the collapse of the SPD, and uncertainty of Germany's role in NATO all point to a period of significant change. He should be able to build a coalition that ensures stability. Looking at the issue, can Merz keep the AfD from gaining further ground, or is the far-right movement here to stay? Will Germany's foreign policy shift to a more independent stance, or will it continue to rely on the US despite growing tensions? Well, Europe watches. The coming weeks will determine not only Germany's future, but also the direction of European politics for years to come. Moving over to Russia and Ukraine. Today, Ukraine marks the 3rd anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. In the spur of this, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy faces one of the most challenging moments of his leadership, being under growing pressure from time to time from Washington to $500 billion minerals deal, and with Russia escalating its military offensive, keeping Ukraine stands at a crossroad. The stakes have never been this higher. At the center of the controversy is a secretive mineral deal being pushed by the US administration, which Zelenskyy has flatly rejected. The deal, which some Ukrainian officials have described as an economic blackmail, would require Ukraine to pay back twice the amount of any future US military aid. Zelenskyy has argued that this demand is unfair and unprecedented, pointing out that other American allies like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar have not been subjected to such repayment terms. Zelenskyy's refusal to sign the mineral deal has fueled tensions between Kyiv and Washington, particularly with President Donald Trump, who has openly criticized the Ukrainian leader. Trump has previously called Zelenskyy a dictator for not holding elections during wartime and has repeatedly accused him of prolonging the war unnecessarily. In a recent interview, Trump suggested that Ukraine was being difficult in peace negotiation and even hinted that Zelensky's presence at the negotiation table was unnecessary. Well, Trump's comments sparked fears that Washington is shifting its stance on Ukraine and prioritizing negotiations with Moscow over Kyiv's interests. These secret U.S.-Russia talks have already begun with the latest round which took place in Riyadh, and we all know about that. However, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff revealed that part of Washington's motivation for brokering a peace deal is to restore American business ties with Russia. This move raises an alarming question. Is the U.S. moving toward a peace deal that benefits American economic interests while leaving Ukraine vulnerable? And if Ukraine is being sidelined from negotiations, what guarantees does it have that its security will be protected? While diplomatic tensions grow, the battlefield situation remains there. Just as before Zelensky's press conference, Russia launched its largest aerial assault of the war, firing 267 drones and 3 ballistic missiles. The attacks killed at least 4 people and once again exposed Ukraine's critical need for air defense system. President Zelenskyy has warned that Ukraine requires at least 20 additional Patriot missile batteries costing $30 billion to counter Russian airstrikes effectively. However, with Trump signaling that the U.S. may scale back military aid, Ukraine is facing a growing shortage of weapons and ammunition. If the Trump administration stops all military deliveries, we will lose 20% of our international support, Zelenskyy admitted. With U.S. aid in question, will European nations like the UK and France be able to fill the gap? UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron are expected to meet Trump this week to discuss Ukraine. But if Europe steps in, can they match the level of military assistance previously provided by the U.S.? Perhaps the biggest concern for Kyiv is the growing perception that decisions about Ukraine's future are being made without Ukraine. Trump's administration has been engaging in direct talks with Moscow, raising concerns that a deal could be made that does not reflect Ukraine's interests. Zelenskyy, on the other hand, has insisted that any peace deal must involve Ukraine and its allies, warning that a U.S.-Russia agreement without Kyiv would be meaningless. It's impossible to finish the war without one party, without Ukraine, he said. But does Washington see it the same way? If the U.S. and Russia agree to see a ceasefire without Ukraine input, would Ukraine be forced to accept terms that could legitimize Russian territorial gains? Well, amid all this uncertainty, Zelenskyy has made a dramatic statement. He is willing to step down if it means securing peace or Ukraine's NATO membership. Take a look.
Розумію це, так, але для чого ображатись? Ображалися би на слово диктатор той, хто є диктатор. А так я це сприймаю як, ну що ж, зробиш. Ну, будемо якось жити зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. І я вважаю, що в їх просторі, в якому вони знаходяться, вони вважають, що це закінчення війни. І я навіть впевнений, що вони вважають, що це дійсно великий успіх і що Путін не ризикне піти знову. Ми вважаємо, що повинні гарантії безпеки. Так, ми розуміємо, що це дороговартісно і не так просто домовитись про сісфаєр тощо. І ми хочемо гарантувати безпеку для наших людей. У мене логіка тоді була наступна. Якщо ви вважаєте, що економічна угода є частиною гарантій безпеки, то чому б вам там, де будуть присутні інтереси вашого бізнесу, то чому там не може бути ваших boots on the ground?
President Zelenskyy there. It's been a pressured season for the Ukrainians. And while some might see this as a selfless move, could his resignation actually backfire? If Zelenskyy steps down, who will take over? Would Russia view it as a sign of weakness and push for even more concessions? Moreover, with Ukraine under martial law, elections are currently not allowed. Even if Zelenskyy were to resign, would it even be possible to hold a fair election while the country is still at war? With uncertainty surrounding the US support, Europe is being forced to take a more active role. Stemmer and Macron's meeting with Trump could be crucial in determining Ukraine's future. But even if the pushback against Washington's shifting stance, does Europe have the resources to provide Ukraine with the military and financial aid it needs? A European summit is expected after the visit to Washington, where they will discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. However, if Trump is willing to back these guarantees, will Europe have the leverage to enforce them? As Ukraine fights for its survival on the battlefield and in diplomatic meetings, the stakes have never been higher. Just like I've stated earlier, Zelenskyy has drawn a clear line. He will not sign a mineral deal that he believes would cripple Ukraine's economy for generations. But with US officials already negotiating with Russia, it could mean Ukraine is being pushed into a deal it doesn't want. Will Trump's approach to negotiations force Ukraine to make painful compromises? Will Europe set up to fill the void left by uncertain US support? And as Russia continues its relentless attacks, how much longer can Ukraine hold out without stronger military backing? Well, the next few weeks could determine not only the outcome of the war, but also the future of Ukraine as an independent nation. The world is hoping, Ukrainians are hoping, and they are watching, and the clock is ticking. We hope that this war comes to an end. Well, moving over to another development, Mali's army has announced an investigation into the alleged killing of 24 civilians by soldiers in Russian Wagner Group machineries. But will this probe lead to accountability, or is it just a cover-up to silence accusations? As Mali's government faces increasing scrutiny over human rights abuses, the question remains, is justice even possible under a military regime that has relied on foreign machineries to maintain control? The Malian military, which seized power in 2020 coup, has often faced accusations of human rights violations. However, investigations into such claims are rare, making the army's announcement of a probe into the latest civilian killings unusual. The Front for the Liberation of Azawad, a Tuareg independence movement, accused Malian soldiers and Russian machineries of intercepting 2 civilian vehicles traveling from Gao to Algeria on Monday. According to the FLA, at least 24 passengers were executed in cold blood, with 1 vehicle set on fire while the other escaped with some survivors. Without directly addressing the killings, the Malian armed forces condemned what they call intoxicating campaigns aimed at discrediting the army. However, by Friday, they announced an official investigation into the death. A relative of one of the drivers told AFP that one of the vehicles was carrying migrants. They encountered a group of Wagner machineries and some Malian soldiers who shot at them. In the first car, everyone died. My cousin too, the source speaking on condition of anonymity told reporters. However, the credibility of the military's investigation is already in doubt. Ridia Lai Mori, a senior fellow at Policy Center for the New South, a Moroccan think tank, expressed skepticism about the probe's outcome. The objective of the investigation is going to be more about countering the allegations against the army and Wagner, rather than trying to find any wrongdoing by the latter, Lamori said. The conclusion of the investigation is likely to say that those allegations are false. If Mali's military truly wants to uncover the truth, why does skepticism dominate the reaction? Can a regime accused of silencing critics and committing atrocities be trusted to hold itself accountable? Mali has been grappling with instability for over a decade, plagued by insurgency, jihadist attacks, and ethnic conflicts. In 2020, a military coup led by Colonel Assimi Gotha toppled the democratically elected government, riding on popular anger over the government's failure to stop attacks by armed groups. Following the coup, Mali's leader severed ties with their former colonial ruler France and turned to Russia's Wagner Group for security support. This move has drastically reshaped Mali's geopolitical alliances while raising concerns about the unchecked power of Wagner mercenaries who have been accused of committing widespread atrocities across Africa. Since the arrival of Russian mercenaries, reports of extrajudicial killings, torture, forced disappearance have increased. Human Rights Watch recently condemned what is called systematic atrocities committed against civilians by Mali's military and Wagner forces, as well as by jihadist groups linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The use of foreign machineries has raised critical questions. Is Mali's government using Wagner forces for security or as a tool to eliminate political opponents and dissenting voices? If Wagner is involved in human rights abuses, who will hold them accountable? Mali's government, Russia, or the international community? These questions highlight a broader dilemma facing African nations that rely on private military groups. When security forces become the enforcers of repression, where can civilians turn for justice? Before the 2020 coup, France had a strong military presence in Mali, leading Operation Barkhane, a counter-terrorism mission aimed at fighting jihadist insurgents in the Sahel region. However, relations between Bamako and Paris deteriorated, with Mali's leadership accusing France of interference and neo-colonial ambitions. Well, in response, France withdrew its forces from Mali, leaving a power vacuum that Wagner quickly filled up. This shift has changed the security landscape in West Africa, with some analysts arguing that Mali has traded one form of foreign influence for another. Except this time, the new allies come with fewer constraints on human rights violations. While the announced investigation may serve as a political tool rather than a genuine attempt at justice, given that Mali's military rulers depended on Wagner for their survival, would they dare to expose their allies' role in the killings? If the probe fails to deliver real accountability, it could further damage Mali's international reputation and risk increasing internal dissent among marginalized communities. Well, this case also raises important questions about the future of military-led government in Africa. With Niger, Burkina Faso, and Guinea all experiencing recent coups, is Mali's handling of this crisis a warning sign for other nations, especially in Africa? If military leaders can act with impunity, this could set a dangerous precedent for other juntas in the region. So far, the international community has been largely silent on the latest accusations against Mali's military, while human rights organizations have consistently documented abuses. Western governments have struggled to take decisive action, especially with shifting alliances in the region, with the African Union and ECOWAS struggling to maintain stability in Sahel. With this latest incident push regional leaders to take a stronger stance, or will Mali's government continue to act without consequences? What next for Mali? As the investigation unfolds, several key developments will determine the country's future. Will the Malian military release transparent findings, or will it dismiss the allegations? How will Russia respond to accusations against Wagner given its drastic increase in influence in Africa? Will Mali's leader continue to prioritize security alliances over human rights concerns? Ultimately, Mali is at the crossroad. The handling of this case will send a strong message, either that justice can be achieved or that impunity remains the law of the land. Well, coming to the climax of this report, the Malian army promises to investigate allegations of mass executions by its soldiers and Russian mercenaries, but with a history of impunity and growing foreign influence. This is actually a real pursuit of justice. But then, we hope the truth is not silenced. Well, until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Remember, tonight we'll be bringing you untold stories with Onyi Okpala at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day.